today it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Jack Sarfatti. He is a theoretical physicist whom I believe many of you already know. But I'm still going to go in and do his bio. And first of all, Jack is his PhD in physics from the University of California, and the BA in physics from let's see,
Cornell.
Cornell.
Cornell University. Okay. He also visited the Werner Heisenberg Max Planck Institute with John Archibald Wheeler, who is a physicist and participated in the development of the atomic bomb as part of the Manhattan Project. He also is a co-founder and leader of the California-based uh, Physics and Consciousness Research Group.
Yeah, that was back in the 70s. That was back in the 1970s. It's not current.
Okay.
And
Well, I'm
that's
just giving this little bit of a background. Uh, and also, in the following decade, Jack was also a scientific advisor to the Institute of Contemporary Studies, a think tank established under President Reagan's administration, where he helped.
actually let me correct that a little bit. It was actually established when Reagan was the governor of California,
Hmm.
and it was part of the campaign to make him president, and then extended, of course, into his administration. So it was started by Ed Meese and Cap Weinberger and Milton
Wow.
Friedman, people like that.
Okay, all luminaries. And well, I don't think I have to go into too much more. We can go into some of the ancillary information as we maybe get into the physics area of the presentation today. Now, I was not planning on having Jack here today at this particular meeting. However, it's a pleasure to have him. But I'm going to start out with a short video that Jack provided that it kind of is an introduction to the tic-tac phenomenon, of which we're going to go into greater detail. I've got a couple of video clips that I want to show of some of the technology that has been gathered by the government over the past number of years. And it exhibits some fascinating aspects that Jack will be able to go into at some point. Anyway, without further ado, Jack, welcome. Thank you all for being here. And let me start
Joe,
let me start
before you begin the video, just some housekeeping, if you could. Just a reminder to everybody to mute yourself if you're not speaking, so we don't get any background noise intruding, and that would be very helpful sometimes. The real world interjects into the meeting, so we don't interfere with it. So, thank you very much for doing that.
Do a
Right.
mute. Let's see, do a mute.
No,
Okay.
you're fine.
All right, now I'm going to have to navigate around here a little bit. So let's see if I can close this down and get to my. Bear with me. Okay,
May I ask a quick
first
question?
of all, first of all, what I'd like to do is just kind of give you a little brief overview. I sent this out to the mailing list, and it's kind of an introduction to the status of where we are with the distribution of potential life supporting planets in our own galaxy. Okay, the numbers have grown exponentially over the years to the point where right now, within 50 to 100 light years of the Earth, we probably have about 700 star systems that are class G or yellow dwarfs, such as our sun, that have at least one planet that can support life, or even a planet that can support life better than the Earth. Okay, so if you've read through this, that gives you the background of going into and discussing what the technology that we're seeing with the Tic Tacs, where they might be, whether they're extraterrestrial or they're terrestrial in nature. And again, the science that's going into it, we're moving further along. Every day brings us closer to a viable answer to what they are and how we may be able to promote them ourselves. So Okay, let me
Joe,
go.
if I could jump in real quick, Julie had a quick question. If you don't mind, let's allow her to ask that question before we start the video. If you don't.
All right, Julie, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I also wrote it in the chat window. Is it okay to take screenshots of the slides or no?
Oh, Jack, do you have any problem with that?
No, no. In fact, didn't I post the slideshow? Don't you have it somewhere?
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm trying to find it, and I'm going to bring it up after the video. I will be showing the slideshow. Also, Julia, this is going to be videoed, and you can download it. It's going to be up on YouTube within a day,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
you have
okay.
full
Never
access.
mind.
It'll
You
be
have
available.
full access to everything. So,
Yep. Okay. Fantastic.
See it on YouTube then. Live.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Jack.
right, let's see if I can find the error. Here we go.
There we go. Yeah, that's it. That's the video.
Okay, let me know if it's loud enough. Sometimes I have a little problem with these, so. Hasn't started yet, has it?
No, it has not.
Where's the?
It's not rolling, Joe.
Bad connection. We're being sabotaged.
No. Yeah, Joe's sabotaged by his computer,
Showing-
unfortunately.
I think you might have to log in. Vimeo.
You don't.
You don't
Yeah.
have to. Sometimes Vimeo does this to
Well,
me.
not the window is that's underneath. That might be
Sorry, window
fine.
underneath. Let's see.
Yeah,
You see where it says upload live stream and create your own videos all in HD?
Mhm.
It may want you to log in.
yeah, but you know what? That might be the wrong.
Log in.
Right.
No, that may be the wrong URL.
Or just close the window, just the little X where it says upload, just close that window and then it might engage.
Okay,
Right.
I've got so many windows open
No,
right
no,
now.
no, down below, there's a little X. The
Yeah,
bar
because-
that says upload, live stream and create your own videos, it's a little X all the way to the left.
Oh, yes.
Down the left,
okay.
right.
Gotcha.
Clear
And
that.
Okay.
Now you
start.
should be all right because it's embedded in Jack's page, so it should be clear to go. Nope. Not
It
so
should be
much.
working. It was
I
working.
have this theory.
Jack, can you
that-
share it? Can you share it, Jack, off of your?
Yeah, I
mind
kind
sharing
of think
it?
that's what has to happen.
I'm sure I don't know quite how to do that. Let me see. I'm afraid if I.
You know, I think that they protect people from going
No,
to
it's a
Zoom and
public-
seeing everything.
Definitely public. It's not. There shouldn't be any. I think he's just on. I think he's just on the wrong URL.
Right.
Did you get it working before?
Yeah, I brought it up. I brought it up in the share and I played it in a share before anybody.
Okay. Why don't
joined.
you just show the slideshow? Can you just show the slideshow?
Yes.
I'll see if what I can do.
See if I can find.
And if
the
you want to
slide.
send me the URL, Jack, I'll try it from my computer also.
Okay. Hang on. Let me.
Okay,
Thank
here's the slideshow.
Yeah.
Can
Do the
everybody see the
slide.
slideshow?
Yes, sir.
Do that because that's basically what the video is.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Jack, you want to narrate it then?
Okay, but I was gonna. All right. Well. Okay. I guess we could do that. Okay, so stop at that slide. This is a meeting we had in Cortona, Tuscany, about right before the COVID epidemic started, November of 2019. And actually, that's on video also. If you go to my Vimeo channel, you can actually see it's 6 hours. And unfortunately, the guy who recorded it did not give me a microphone, so the sound isn't very good. You have to really listen to it with earphones. But Nick Cook was there and a whole bunch of people were there, so it's kind of interesting. And it was, as I say, it's like an all-day workshop. Okay, go to the next slide. This is just some background material, like I guess what you're going to also do, Joe.
Mhm.
This is interesting below. There's this French chap I know. He's a pilot. He's a commercial pilot, and his grandfather, I think it was his father, his grandfather was like a top general in the French Air Force in the 1960s. Had real close tic-tac close encounters, and that's how. Pierre, he's a commercial pilot. I don't want to say what airline, and he has had experiences too. So this is. Back, my grandfather was a 4-star general in the French Air Force, in charge of the FATAC, the Air Tactical and the grandfather, the French Air Force saw these tic tacs, the same kinds of tic tacs that Fravor and all these guys talk about. So that let's go to the next slide. That's I guess this is either Louis Elizondo or is it Eric Davis, the 5 observables, sudden and instant acceleration, hypersonic velocities without signatures, low observability, trans-medium travel. All that is trivial to understand in terms of modern physics, in terms of Einstein's general theory of relativity. Mainstream, you don't need any string theory, you don't need anything exotic. It's just easily, everything here, all these 5 points are easily understood is my claim, okay? By mainstream, plain vanilla theoretical physics properly applied. The problem has been that most people in the field just simply are not competent in the physics required to understand the phenomena. I include, by the way, Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis in that. All right, let's go on to the next one. Oh, this, I don't know if you've been following. This is interesting. Now, I thought this came from a talk that Hal Puthoff gave to a group, but apparently it's from Christopher Mellon. I don't remember exactly how I got the slide. So just yesterday, I've been having like back and forth with Hal Puthoff, and now claims he never saw the slide before, although he certainly would agree with it. And let me just give a little background. Back in 1973, when I was first met Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ and Edgar Mitchell, part of the Stanford Research remote viewing project, and I met them under very strange circumstances, which I don't have time to go into. But basically, I was told by Brendan O'Regan, and later amplified by a guy named George Koopman, about a year later, that the 2 things they were interested in, meaning, I guess, the CIA and the intelligence community, 2 things. How does consciousness work physically, as a physical phenomenon? And also how do flying saucers fly? That's what they wanted to know. And that's what I was, recruited into, that project. And that's what I've been working on basically for 50 years. And now I claim the problem is basically solved. We've solved both problems, consciousness, paranormal, in terms of the physics, in terms of the laws of physics that are involved. And they're both connected. There's a very obvious reason why all these UFO encounters have a paranormal telepathic, the ETs, whatever they are, the entities communicate telepathically. We understand that it doesn't involve anything supernatural. The physics of it is pretty well understood. So everything in this, can you move the slide up a little bit, Joe?
Yep.
Yeah, Joe, you're going to have to get the slide fully.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, good. So I agree basically with everything that's in this slide, except I'm not sure about penetration of solid surfaces. That I'm not so sure about, but psychotronic weapons, cognitive human interface, yeah. Anomalies in space-time, that's what we're talking about. And it says, if you go, what's this? If you see the bottom thing, it's kind of blocked off there. The bottom thing, what was considered, they say it's quantum physics. I call it's post-quantum physics. What was considered phenomena is now quantum physics. Slight technical pedagogical correction. It's not quantum physics in the sense of orthodox quantum physics that is taught in textbooks. The orthodox quantum physics is a special case. There's a more general theory, I call it post-quantum physics, which includes quantum physics as a limiting case in the same way that Einstein's 1905 special relativity is a limiting case of his 1916 general relativity. It's a very similar situation. But if there are questions on that, you can ask me later. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, stop there just for a second. I actually, when I was working for the Reagan people in the early 1980s, we were helping to formulate the Strategic Defense Initiative. And I was calling for a U.S. Space Force as a 6th branch of the military back then, early 1980s. And of course, Trump did it. I don't know if Biden's going to keep it. Maybe he'll cancel it. But let's go to the next slide. Okay. I'm just saying that Einstein's theory of relativity explains all UFO phenomena. The slide is pretty self-explanatory. Why don't if anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt, okay? Okay, I'll just read this. What's the basic idea of Einstein's relativity? And this is both special relativity and general relativity. Alice and Bob, moving relative to each other in any way, use light signals to observe the same events. They wish to compare their measurements of the same events. Relativity is essentially an algorithm, a computer program, into which they enter their raw data as inputs, and lo and behold, they get exactly the same output numbers called frame invariance. It is this agreement that proves objective reality independent of our consciousness in classical theoretical physics. Now, in quantum mechanics, the same is true in Bohm's interpretation of quantum mechanics. This pilot wave interpretation. Let me just leave this because it's fairly it's okay. Well, let's put it this way. The reason I'm bringing this up is that this ties in with Julia Mossberger's work. All her experimental data are totally consistent with mainstream physics. Well, maybe a little bit beyond mainstream, the post-quantum physics. You've all heard about this thing called entanglement, quantum entanglement, spooky action at a distance. In quantum mechanics, this entanglement exists, and it's now very important in quantum cryptography and all kinds of applications, quantum computing, even certain sensor instruments. The use of quantum entanglement as a quantum information resource is very important. But the idea is that within quantum mechanics itself, you cannot use entanglement as a direct communication channel. In other words, if quantum entanglement could not be used to explain the kind of precognition and telepathy that Julia and people in her kind of group, general community, are actually observing. But that's okay because it turns out quantum mechanics is an incomplete theory. There was Einstein and Bohr debated this back in the 1920s, this famous Einstein-Bohr debates whether quantum mechanics is incomplete. And what I'm claiming is that quantum mechanics is incomplete. There's more general theory, and within the more general theory, everything that people like Julia report is easily understood conceptually. It doesn't violate any fundamental principles, laws of nature. And it's technically, it's called entanglement signaling or EPR signaling. And it has to do, well, I don't know if I could get into this. It has to do, okay, in the Bohm theory of quantum reality, it's a dualistic theory. There's what is called, there are the quantum mechanical information pilot waves, and really what they are, they're physical mental waves. They're called proto-mind waves. They are the aspect of the universe that is intrinsically thought-like. Actually, it's a physical, let's call them pre-mental fields, and they interact with classical matter. Classical matter, you can think of them as like electrons, charged particles, or classical electromagnetic fields. So these quantum mechanical wave functions, which are actually physical fields, but with strange properties, they act on material, on classical level material. And so that explains, how does thought move matter? Very easily in Bohm's theory, it's called the quantum potential. There's like a quantum sort of force that moves matter. So this is when I move my finger here, when I'm doing this, when I talk, what's happening, there's a coherent quantum information field in my brain, or throughout the whole body, a coherent, technically it's called a Fourier condensate, okay? And that field is actually moving, causing my motor activity above and beyond any kind of, classical forces. Classical forces there too, but this is in addition to, it's a quantum, let's call it the quantum force, or the force of Star Wars, remember the force loop, that sort of thing. But what is consciousness? What is our conscious qualia? Well, the conscious qualia is simply the back reaction. It's the action-reaction principle. For every action, there's a reaction. And so the thoughts, your conscious experiences are coming from material signals, like the electromagnetic signals of your nerves going down maybe into the microtubules. It's the Stuart Hameroff stuff, Hameroff and Penrose, that kind of stuff. You read their books. And it's the back reaction of classical electromagnetic signals back on this quantum information mental field, this coherent mental field. That's what qualia are. That's what our experiences are. So that's the picture. It's this two-way relationship. Now, in ordinary quantum mechanics, which says this cannot happen, that's because it violates this general action-reaction principle. And it's an approximation. But we now, we understand this now. Now, I came up with this idea back in 1996. Remember, the CIA has been paying me, in fact, in a roundabout way, since the 1970s to work on these problems, right? So by 1996, actually 1995, what happened was David Bohm, I had worked with David Bohm at the University of London, and he died, I guess, in the early 1990s, but his posthumous book, which was co-written with his assistant Basil Hiley, called The Undivided Universe. And when that book came out, this is a paranormal, I'm going to describe a paranormal experience. I was in a bookstore down at the City Hall in San Francisco, with the Opera Building, called a clean, well-lighted place for books, walking in the science section, and there I see, just came out, The Undivided Universe by David Bohm. And I had worked with David Bohm like 20 years earlier. So I took the book out, and first page I opened to, it talks about this idea of action reaction. I'm talking about action reaction, but not with consciousness. And as soon as I saw that, it was like what Arthur Kessler describes as a library angel in The Sleepwalkers, Arthur Kessler's book, The Sleepwalkers. And in any case, as soon as I saw that, it was like, a flash, bang, oh, that explains consciousness. It was an epiphany, okay? Like Saul falling off his donkey on it, And any case, so I got the idea then in this kind of paranormal encounter. And then in 1996, I was at Stuart Hameroff's Tucson conference. I think it was Tucson 1 or Tucson 2, whatever. And I gave a talk on it there. That's where I first gave the talk on it, on this idea of action reaction. And actually, Hal Puthoff told me he really thought I was on the right track there. Hal Puthoff actually understood that idea and liked it very much. And then what happened, basically for 20 years, I had the intuitive idea, but I didn't have the rigorous mathematics to really show how this thing really works in terms of the formalism of quantum mechanics. And being kind of lazy myself, I was also involved in other things. But what happened was in 2015, a guy named Roderick Sutherland, who's a physicist at the University of Sydney, back in Sydney, theoretical physicist, he made a lot of money in stocks or something like that. So he's independently wealthy, and he's able to do whatever problems he feels like working on. In any case, he formulated my qualitative idea totally rigorously, beautiful mathematical work. There's a Lagrangian technique. And what he did, he actually took Bohm's 1952 pilot wave theory, on which I base my ideas qualitatively. Bohm developed that theory at Princeton, 1952, when he was working with Einstein, actually. It's a whole story there. But the problem is that Bohm's theory from 1952 was non-relativistic. It's only good for low energies. And it had certain other problems. In any case, Sutherland totally made everything relativistic. He incorporates entanglement in a very natural way. But in order to make everything work, you have to have precognition back from the future, what are called advanced destiny waves, okay? And it turns out that's not, there's a guy named Yakia Aharonov, who's a very famous physicist in Israel, and he's also down in California. One of the, I forget the name of the Chapman, as a Chapman School, I think Chapman University in Irvine, and he also formulated explaining entanglement with these back from the future or advanced destiny effects, the very sorts of things that Julia observes in her lab with precognition. But in order to get that to work, you have to have the bone picture. So in any case, what I'm trying to say is that we have now a coherent, qualitative, and even mathematical theory, both that explains not only ordinary consciousness, that explains all the paranormal phenomena, precognition, psychokinesis, all that stuff easily understood, easily understood. Now, do you know about how the hippies say physics, that book? Okay, by the way, do you hear me? Is everybody hearing what I'm saying? You hear? Yeah, okay. So any case, this book came out in 2011 by David Kaiser. He's an MIT, full professor at MIT, Harvard PhD in physics. And he's a historian of physics. And the book came out about all this stuff, how I met Hal Puthoff in 1973, and all this stuff at Esalen and the Physics Consciousness Research Group, and how we're working on all this stuff. But the book, the official story is not true. In that book, he gives the impression that we failed. We didn't explain it. Well, he's wrong. We did explain it. Actually, okay, his book came out in 2011. And to be fair, the final solution to the problem was by 2015, 2016. So I'll cut him a little bit of slack on that. All right, let's get to the next slide. Wait, any questions so far? Because I'm talking fast. Are there any, yeah, question, Julia?
Yeah, I think this is, what you're saying makes sense to me, of course. And I keep asking myself, so I find myself often talking to people who, as soon as you mention any kind of theory that smacks of dualism, there's innate resistance to it.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, yes. and I just sort of think, so I guess I kind of wanted to ask you, how do you push back against folks who say, why should it have to go between mental and physical and mental and physical? Why can't we just have one? And so I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they're men, I just tell them they're stupid.
Right, but like in a way that's not an ad hominem attack. How could right?
But I'm at a loss to understand what it's like. People are like monkeys. They're like a herd mentality. I mean, they think dualism bad. I mean, monism good, dualism bad. I mean, it's nonsense. I mean, it's I don't know what to say to them. Like I'm looking at an ape or something.
Well, I think it's like a cultural shift. I mean, I think for hundreds of years, monism has been good, partly because science has made an agreement with religion. We're going to do our own thing, but at least we're going to go with monism.
Yeah, I don't know, but actually the Cartesian dualism. Let's put this one. It's called wave particle duality in quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
So physics.
It's already right there.
It's already right there. And by the way, when the wave particle duality of quantum physics is the same as mind matter duality. Okay, and by the way, I'm not the first one to say this. Actually, Niels Bohr himself, when back in the early 1920s, noted the analogies between quantum waves and thought. That was already known. And even John von Neumann, all these people in Wigner, when they talk about collapse of the wave function, generate, I mean, that's it's right there. And also, so James Jeans, back in around 1925 or so, he wrote a popular book called The Mysterious Universe, in which he says the universe is more and more looking like a great thought rather than a great machine. He meant the quantum waves, they're like thought waves. That's what he meant by great thought. Well, it's both. The true answer is that the universe is both a great thought and a great machine. It's both, it's dual. So I wear dualism as a badge of honor because that's what physics is telling me. And that's what works. As soon as you have that idea, everything, it works. And the point is, here's the point. Let's get down to brass tacks. Let's get down to technology and money. What I'm saying is that once you have the correct physics that I'm talking about here, guess what you can do? You can make conscious computers. You can make, with using quantum dot nanotechnology now, we can make totally, in other words, your iPhone, the iPhone, the iPhone 20 or something is going to be as conscious as you are. Consciousness is an elementary thing. Consciousness is a universal phenomenon. Consciousness is like gravity. It's not that difficult. It's a natural phenomenon. It comes from the action-reaction principle. The same action-reaction principle, well, more generalized action-reaction principle of Isaac Newton. Then Einstein used it to develop general relativity. The theory of the gravitational field is because classical energy, stress energy of matter bends space-time. So what happens is the space-time manifold acts on matter, what's called geodesic motion, like when we freely fall. Space-time is causing matter to move, as John Wheeler says, but then matter reacts back on space-time, generating gravity. And that gets us into warp drive, by the way. See, the whole tic-tac, the warp drive is control of the gravitational field. The action-reaction principle, in its most general form, explains our consciousness, and it also explains warp drive, explains the whole, so the two things are connected. It's actually the same physics. It's the all the paranormal stuff that Jacques Vallée talks about, in his books, the telepathic encounters with the beings. That's all action reaction between quantum waves and the brain material, and the propulsion mechanism of the flying saucers, also action reaction between the classical matter energy and the gravitational field, the space-time metric. So we understand it. It's actually pretty elementary stuff. It's not difficult. It's not hard. So, okay, now, do you have another question?
Yeah, Jack, let me jump in here if I may. Talking about the space-time and the tic-tac technology,
Yeah.
Okay, now, how close do you think that we are being able to replicate the physics that you explain in the operation of the tic-tac
Okay, it's all a
phenomenon?
question of money. We're very close. In fact, the Russians may have already done it. The Russians may have already done it. I mean, I don't know that for a fact. I'm speculating because of the 2019 incident with the kid, was it USS Kid with these drones? That was okay. That may be. It may not be. I don't know, but it might be Russian technology based on my physics, because the Russians have been monitoring my stuff on this particular project since at least 2011. They have at least 8 or 9 years that they're working on it.
Right.
I'm taken very seriously in Russia. Okay, I can prove that. Okay, and they have smart physicists, and unfortunately, people on our side, I'm not going to mention names, have been obstructing my message to the Defense Department, and and so the U.S. is behind as a result of that.
Okay.
However, I mean, it's not difficult. It's simply a matter of finding the right metamaterials. You've heard Elizondo talk about metamaterials, right? And even Hal Puthoff has mentioned metamaterials. I first mentioned metamaterials in UFOs back in 2011. There's all kinds of articles about that. There's an article in Vice magazine about that. There's an article, Sharon Weinberger, a defense journalist, wrote about it in the BBC. It's on the BBC website. So I've been talking about this since 2011. Of course, the Russian, the military, the GRU, whatever they are, they were there. They were at this meeting. It was a meeting at DARPA. It was defense, the DARPA, NASA, 100-year Starship project in Orlando in 2011. Well, I was General Pete Worden, who was the head of the NASA administrator at NASA Ames, invited me down. They paid my way down. They'd given an invited talk. Eric Davis was there, John Kramer, they were all there, but they all poo-pooed what I was talking about because I mentioned UFOs, and you weren't supposed to mention UFOs at this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jack, along the same lines, it was just announced that the Chinese have actually started using quantum communications in their space
Oh yeah,
communication.
yeah,
Is
oh
that
yeah,
what-
yeah, of course, yeah. But if you read How the Hippies Saved Physics by David Kaiser, Kaiser says the reason for that whole development was because of me, Nick Herbert, the other guys involved in the physics conscious research, but we made that an issue. We popularized that idea, which led to the whole quantum entanglement communication revolution.
Okay.
David Kaiser, who's the head of the science technology program at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, says that was the effect of our group, which, by the way, came from the CIA project with Hal Puthoff. It was all part of that Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, Uri Geller, Pat Price, the Edgar Mitchell stuff. It was all a spin-off from that back in the 1970s. That's what that book, How the Hippies Saved Physics, is about. So, of course, the Chinese are now coming out with, with applications of what we started back then. And that's true.
Okay. Let me just do a quick round robin here. Nick Curto, would you have any questions for Jack or comments?
Well, right now I'm taking it in. I am fascinated, and I'm going to save that for a little bit later. I don't want to take the time right now. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Let's go. Well, I forgot.
Oh, wait, I have one other person I'd like to ask, okay? Dr. Topero, Chantel, do you have any questions?
No, it's pretty clear up to here, so looking forward to seeing what you've got here.
Okay, Stan, you okay? Okay, go ahead, Jack, all yours.
Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's just a review of general relativity. I already spoke about that. Let's go on. Okay, let's stop here for a minute. Okay, what's the energy problem? Okay, now this is, for example, Hal Puthoff when he talks about tic-tac, and when he tries to promote his watered down version of general relativity to the Defense Department to get funding and all that stuff, he never solves the energy problem. The problem is, in order to manipulate space-time according to current mainstream ideas, requires so much energy, forget about it. So obviously there's something wrong. What's wrong? Okay. So the energy problem, the space-time, normally it takes too much energy to make a significant change in the ambient gravitational field. It's just not possible to do. Okay, that's the there was breaking the sound barrier. There's breaking the energy barrier from what Hal Puthoff calls metric engineering, control of the gravitational field. Yet we see these tic-tacs. It's warp drive. That's the only way to explain the tic-tac. When you see a flying saucer going at incredible, maybe thousands of miles an hour, and it suddenly makes a U-turn or a right-angle turn, which according to ordinary physics, you talk about hundreds, maybe thousands of Gs, maybe tens of thousands of Gs. That's impossible, right? In general relativity with warp drive, it's 0 G. See, there were two. Acceleration is a much more complicated concept in general relativity than it is in ordinary common sense, the kind of elementary physics you're taught in school. What happens is, okay, if we see a UFO that's say going at 20,000 miles an hour and then makes a sudden turn, and you estimate, oh my God, that's thousands of G's. How's that possible? Well, okay, what is that? Because how is that acceleration measured? It's measured by, say, like a radio telescope or just with the eye. It's measured by seeing electromagnetic radiation coming from the object. So that's what's called kinematic acceleration. That's the apparent acceleration. But if in general relativity, if you're actually inside the craft, and if you're controlling the local gravitational field, what's happening, you are freely falling at 0 G. This is called the Einstein equivalence principle. It's one of the when Einstein in 1905, he made his special relativity theory, right? Meaning E equals mc squared, nuclear physics, the whole thing. Okay, he struggled for 10 years, from 1905 to 1915, trying to develop explaining gravity, because you cannot explain gravity in special relativity. It doesn't work. He tried, didn't work. One of his, the story goes, Einstein's happiest thought or happiest moment, Einstein's epiphany, he picks up the newspaper and he reads about a painter who was painting on the clock tower in the Zurich City Hall or something, and fell off his ladder and survived. Okay. Then the painter said, "Hey, I didn't weigh, I was weightless. I didn't weigh anything. When I fell, yeah, it was falling." Okay. And Einstein, okay. So the point is, look, what is the gravitational field? What the gravitational field, it gives you the motions, weightless, what are called weightless geodesic motions. Think of the space station, right? The space station going around the Earth when it's not firing its rocket engines. Okay. The astronauts are weightless. All right. So the reason is because the space station is going around in what's called, say, an elliptical circular, a time-like geodesic orbit that's created by the gravitational field of the Earth. Now, if you can locally control that gravitational field, you can be weightless inside. So what I'm saying is, and this is called proper acceleration. The local proper acceleration is not the same as the acceleration you measure looking for that the outside observer sees looking with light signals or radar signals, whatever you want to. Okay, they're two different things, and the mathematics shows the difference. Einstein's mathematics, what's called the geodesic equation in general relativity, explains the connection between the apparent acceleration or the kinematic acceleration that you see using light signals and the actual real G-force that's felt inside the object that you're measuring. Okay, they're two different things, and they're related by something called the Levi-Civita connection. Okay, technical. So all this stuff is understood, but it's not taught properly, especially to the public. So people are very confused, and the people who are confused are also people in the government, engineers, missile engineers. This guy, I always have this guy named Paul Murad. Some of you may know Paul Murad. You know, he's a ballista. He knows what his field, but he can't understand this. Most people I know, they can't break through to understand two different kinds of acceleration, and they get confused. So, for example, when you see a flying saucer, it's not moving through space. In terms of the local space, in terms of local space-time fabric or the local gravitational field right at the object, it's standing still as though it's freely falling, it's freely floating, is what John Wheeler, it's weightless, it's in a weightless condition. What it's doing, it's folding space. It's not moving through space, it's controlling the space-time fabric. So that to an observer that's far outside the warp field, that's in ordinary space-time outside the warp field, it's effective motion. It can even be faster than light. It can be backward in time. We're talking time travel here. Once you have this time travel, but the problem has been that it took too much energy to do it. Okay, and I realized back around that 2010. I was thinking about this problem. It was being paid, I don't know if any of you have heard of Joe Firmage. We had this thing called ISSO. Joe Firmage put in several $1 million, to try to solve these problems. And it didn't really work. But in 2010, I connected the electromagnetic properties of metamaterials and realized using the electromagnetic susceptibility response field of metamaterials to an applied electromagnetic field, you can have a very small applied electromagnetic field create a very large gravitational field. Okay, and let's see, maybe there's a slide here that explains that. So in other words, I claim I've solved the energy problem. You can create strong gravitational fields with small amounts of energy using the anomalous electromagnetic responses of metamaterials. That's the claim. I could be wrong, but let's put this way, there's no other way to explain what we're seeing. So we have a choice here. I'm like a lawyer, I'm like a defense lawyer. I mean, or like a detective also, like Paul Hill, detective trying to figure out what's going on. If the reports of what these objects do is true, then there's only one way to explain it. That's the way I've explained it. And it's simple elementary physics. It's not difficult. Now, of course, if somehow everything's a lie, if some people, the debunkers, they say, well, none of it is true, right? Okay, then I'm wrong. In that case, I'm wrong. But if the evidence is there, then we have the explanation. Elementary physics can be taught to certainly undergraduate physics major level. It's not difficult stuff. All right, any questions?
Yeah, Jack, I do have a question.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier before the briefing actually started about the object making right angle turns
Yeah, that's what I'm explaining.
incredibly fast. How would they affect the navigation to do that? I mean, do you have any idea how that might take place?
I think, are you referring to, there's a, okay, well, let's be clear now. There's a thing about, there's an objection is the people working in this field with warp drive metrics, people like Matt Visser and Fernando Lobo and Alcubierre, those guys. They claim that if you try to go faster than light, you can have a navigation problem. I think they're wrong about that. Right now, we're not talking about going faster than light. They claim if you're going subluminal in warp drive, there's no navigation problem. What they're claiming is that if you try to go faster than light, what happens is you get what are called event horizons in the warp field. You have like on one end of this, like in the nose of the ship, let's see, in the nose of the ship, you're going to have a black hole event horizon. At the tail of the ship, you're going to have a white hole event horizon. So at the tail of so you're going to have problems with navigation because with a black hole event horizon, you can get in, but you can't get out. With a white hole event horizon, you can go out, but you can't get in. So, they're one-way membranes. So in order to navigate, you normally be able, have to go two-way. You have to be able to sort of transmit the signal out and also get, receive signals back, like radar, stuff like that. Bounce signals, things like that. So they claim there's gonna be a problem in superluminal. That doesn't affect anything about the Nimitz, about the Navy encounters, about the local encounters. They're not going faster than light. They're going hypersonic maybe, but they're not faster than light. So there's no navigation problem there. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant.
Well,
But,
I think going back, I mean, the phenomenon has been observed over the years. It's been reported, not widely reported because it's not seen all that often. But where it has been reported, somebody came up with a thought that they were able to somehow pull space to the vehicle.
well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it'd be a projector or a device that would be able to do that.
That what?
That there was some type of a device or a projector on the vehicle.
No. I've explained. That's what I'm explaining.
Okay.
I'm explaining. Okay, it's the metamaterial. The metamaterial. Well, okay. Let me go in a little more detail. The metamaterial is the fuselage. You make a fuselage out of layers that we call metasurfaces. What are these metamaterials? They are artificial atoms that are called meta-atoms arranged in lattice structure. Basically, you want two-dimensional sheets, stacks of two-dimensional sheets. These artificial atoms, they can be probably things like quantum dots, if you know nanotechnology, quantum dots. They're like little, think of them as little LCR oscillator circuits, but then at the nanometer scale, maybe micron scale, they can be different, like you can have lattices within lattices, like wheels within wheels, okay? So what happens is at each meta-atom, I have applied like a voltage. Let's just think of the simplest thing. Let's think of a condenser, a resistor, a solenoid, and a battery. LCR, okay. That's basically all it is. That's basically what a meta-atom is. That's what's called the effective circuit description of the meta-atom. As a rough approximation, you can think of it that way. I change the voltage. By changing the voltage, I'm changing the strength of the induced gravitational field. And I don't need very much voltage to make a very large gravitational field, it turns out, because of the peculiarity of the electrical permittivity and the permeability of the coils and the stuff, the dielectric inside the condenser plate, stuff like that. Now, there's also, because of dissipation, because you have resistance, when you apply a voltage, to this circuit, and you get an output current, let's say, the output current, in this case, the output current could be the gravitational field, the output gravitational. There's a phase lag, there's a phase difference. There's a phase difference between the voltage input and the current output, let's say, if you're doing ordinary just circuit theory, okay? Now, it turns out when you apply that, Einstein's gravitational field equations can be thought of as a kind of circuit equation. You have an input. The input is the electromagnetic stress energy field, the pump, what we call the pump field, the input field. And it goes, the metamaterial is like a couple, the metamaterial couples the input electromagnetic field to the output gravitational field. And depending on the phase, you have a cosine factor, a cosine of the phase difference, okay, between input and output. When that cosine is positive, you're inducing a attractive gravity field. And then when the cosine is negative, it's a matter of the phase, which you control by changing the amount of dissipation, amount of resistance of irreversible energy loss. So by changing the phase, you can either make within this little meta atom, within this tiny little dot, like a quantum dot, you can make the local gravitational field there either repulsive, anti-gravity, or attractive. And this is all coming from Einstein's equations. It's all there, it's all pretty standard stuff once you look at it in the right way. So what you have a bunch of pixels at different, okay, in the Alcubierre picture, what happens is if you have a tic-tac that's coming toward you, say you have a tic-tac that's coming toward you, it's contracting the space in front of you. So there's an attractive gravitational field induced at the nose of the device coming toward you, an attractive gravitational field. Because attractive gravity contracts the space, is the way it works in general relativity. At the tail end, it's doing the opposite. The tail end, it wants to expand space. So that's anti-gravity. Okay, that's anti-gravity. That's expanding space. That's the Alcubierre idea. But so because you have different, the meta atoms at the front of the little pixels, think of it like a pixelated, like on a TV screen. The pixels in the nose, the phase shift is such that it's generating a local attractive gravity field. And behind it, the phase is the opposite, 90 degrees opposite, and it's a pi over 2 phase shift relative, and that's creating the anti-gravitational field. Now, here's the thing. Normally, if you have an object coming toward you and you're doing radar and stuff like that, you're watching the object, there's a Doppler shift, right? So the object coming toward you is blue shifted, right? In ordinary physics. And the object going away from you is red shifted. This gravitational warp field works the opposite direction. When the thing is coming toward you, it's the gravitational warp thing, you're going to see the opposite. When it's coming toward you, you're going to see a red shift. And when it's going away from you, you're going to see a blue shift. See, so the gravitational frequency shifts are opposite to motional Doppler shifts. That's the first thing. So this right away gives us a conceptually simple observational test. If the Navy or anybody else, or the Air Force or the Space Force, if they have the right kinds of frequency detectors, when they see tic-tacs coming toward you, they're going to see they're going to see what we call reverse Doppler effects. Now, Bruce Cornett claims he sees reverse Doppler effects from flying saucers using sound waves. It'll be, it's a universal, since we're talking about space and time, space compression, space expansion, it's universal. Any kind of wave motion gets shifted in the same way because gravity is universal. So there's we have a very simple way to detect whether these objects are moving with warp drive or not, because you're going to see anomalous frequency shifts, just the opposite of what you expect from ordinary motion. Okay, so that's a definite signature that you're seeing warp drive. Okay, now I sort of lost. What else do you want to know? Any questions? Yes, go ahead, Nick.
Thank you. Yes, just a quick one. I'm fascinated with the fact that these UFOs can make such incredible turns, so incredibly quickly.
That's what I'm going to explain.
So my question is, if you're a pilot in a craft like that, is it through thought or is it instrumental that you can make these?
Oh, that's a different question. That's a different, yeah. Okay, well, you read The Day After Roswell by Philip Corso?
No.
Nick? Oh, well, you should read that because he talks about that. Yeah.
Oh,
He talked about that. Yeah. Well, okay. Look, yeah, that's like a side issue. It's a technical. It's not essential to the basic concept of warfare. How do you control it? I don't know. You can control it with anyway. He could be turned a rheostat. Who knows? In principle, you can control it with your mind. Yeah. Phil Corso says that they have evidence that the beings inside the flying saucers, that they were actually using the brain waves to control it. That's quite possible, because the amounts of energy are pretty small anyway. And, so yeah, in other words, direct thought, sort of like psychokinetic control. You saw like what Q does on Star Trek. Yeah, all that is thinkable. I'm not saying that's the way they're actually doing it, but there have been reports like that, and it doesn't contradict. But that's a different level. That's a different. That's not the same technical physics I was talking about previously. It's
okay.
okay.
Well,
Okay,
thank you so much.
Julia has her hand raised. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Julia.
Oh, I had a question. The way you were talking about it, Jack, it sounded like you have a prototype, like you actually have these artificial atoms and you're able to do this, or is that?
Well, I'm a theoretical physicist. I don't know.
Like, no, I'm sorry, I'm an empiricist, so of course I'm going to ask, like, so have you built this? Because
well, no, what I have the ability to visualize it. Yeah. It's in my head. Sure, we can do it. Now Vladimir Putin may have it. His guys may have it, because they've been taking me seriously about this for at least since 2011, and probably before that. Although I didn't have these ideas, specific enough until really 2011 at that time began to have it, and it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that we really got it down. I'm working with another guy. I'm working with a guy named Keith Wanzer. He's a full professor of physics at Cal State Fullerton. Actually, the same place, with Jim Woodward, because he actually knows Jim Woodward. I don't think Jim Woodward's stuff's going to work, but that's a different story. And we've made a lot of progress. No, in order to actually make this, we have to develop the metamaterials. Now, if we had retrieved metamaterials like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis and Chris Mellon, these guys claim they have it. See, the problem is that they're stonewalling. They're competing with us. They're suppressing our work, letting the Russians get it, because they have their own, God knows, for money, funding, who the hell knows why they're doing it. But if we actually had some retrieved metamaterial, then that would make it a lot easier to make our own. But the way I see it at the moment is we have to develop these metamaterials, and it's a big industry now. They have what's called they're using artificial intelligence algorithms to design metamaterials, in which you just specify what kind of electromagnetic response of the metamaterial do you want. You put it into the computer, the supercomputer, and the artificial intelligence out comes the design of what kind of metamaterials, how to arrange the metamaterials relative to each other. So basically, getting the right metamaterial is analogous to in the Manhattan Project of getting the right isotopes of plutonium and uranium. Okay, and also analogous to designing the right implosion mechanism, to trigger the explosion. I should mention that my professors at Cornell were all from the Manhattan Project. Hans Bethe, Phil Morrison, Robert Wilson, who went on to Batavia. Those are the guys who I learned physics from, especially Hans Bethe. So the way I see it now, if we wanted to make our own, we sort of need a Manhattan Project. It's like what in 1940. In 1940, John Wheeler and Niels Bohr worked out the theory of nuclear fission, the basic theory, liquid drop model nuclear fission, that kind of stuff. Lisa Meitner, around 1936, German woman, physicist in Germany, she, showed sort of basic nuclear fission. So everybody, in principle, making an atomic bomb, a first-year student at a German university would understand the concept. Making it was the problem. Then we had the whole thing with Heisenberg, trying to make it for Hitler, and the whole that whole story. We're in a similar situation today. We have to develop the right metamaterials. Now, If Halpert and Eric Davis claim they have the right metamaterials, I don't know, but they don't have the idea. See, unless maybe they do understand what I'm talking about, and they're pretending not to. They don't know how to use the metamaterials to actually make the thing work. I'm claiming I know how to do that. So does that answer your? Are there any more questions?
Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, I do have one, Jack, if you bear with me.
Yeah.
Going back to the Tic Tac videos, specifically the Navy videos.
Yeah.
The one from the 2005 Nimitz, the pilot, Lieutenant Commander Fravor,
Yeah.
was describing his encounter or encounters
Yeah.
with these objects. The radar operators on the multiple ships with their phased array radars
Yes.
were tracking these things from 80,000 feet down to 50 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pilots were reporting going into the water. So
Yes.
if you look at the multiple mediums that they're actually traveling in, what characteristics would that metamaterials have to have in order to fly in space, high speed, in air medium, and then of course traveling underwater, entering and leaving the ocean? Is there, would you design it based upon those three characteristics and reverse engineer from there, or?
No. All you have to do, it doesn't matter. Well, of course, you got to make sure it's watertight. I mean, I'm not asking you. I'm not a structural engineer. That's just that's just conventional engineering stuff. I'm just saying that you have to have the right, what are called metamaterial resonances that are strong enough so that a relatively small amount of applied electromagnetic field at the input induces a strong either attractive gravity field in a localized region of, within a single dot, so to speak. Think of the metamaterial fuselage as a bunch of pixels. It's like pixels, like our computer screen, right? Like computer screen pixels, right? Except by controlling the amount of electric field, the field you put on each pixel, you can induce either a local attractive gravity field or a local anti-repulsive gravity field. And just that these are near fields. These are not radiant. When I'm not talking about gravity waves, I'm not talking about electric. I'm talking about near field induction fields, like the Coulomb field of a static charge. Okay, those are the gravitational field of the Earth is a static field. It's not made of waves. Gravitational waves are actually very hard to make and very hard to detect. So I'm talking about static fields, what it's called the induction field or the Tesla field, the stuff that power system engineers work with. I'm not talking about the radiation. So you have to worry about structural integrity if it goes into the water. Well, the other thing is this: see, since it's warping the space around it. Say if this object goes into the ocean, is like a shield, like a force shield. The atoms of the molecules of the water don't actually touch it, physically touch it. They may be kept at a slight distance away from it, a kind of boundary layer away from it, and that may also explain how apparently, I mean, Hal Puthoff, I don't say this, but Hal Puthoff claims they can actually go through matter. They can actually warp the matter. Yeah, maybe they can. I don't know. I won't go that far. But okay, does that answer your question or not?
I'm sorry.
Did that answer your question?
No, that does. That does. Thanks, Jack. Okay, let's see. Shall we?
Next slide. Go another slide.
Let's see. I'm gonna find. Somehow I lost my slide deck. Bear with me.
By the way, I should mention while you're doing that, there's this guy Michael Turba. Everybody know about Michael Turba? Turba, he's a spook. He's I'm not sure exactly what he is, but he was at one point Air Force intelligence, and he's having a big fight with Hal Puthoff and Chris Mellon and Eric Davis about the I forget the Go Fast, but one of those videos from the Nimitz encounter, he claims is not what they claim it is. Now, that's not my expertise. I'm not a CIA photographic guy. I'm not like Bruce Maccabee. See, that's got a question for a guy like Bruce Maccabee, right? How to evaluate what they're actually seeing. That's not, that's not my job. There is a guy. Have you seen this? I think that's your website, the UAP physics guy. His name is Thor. That's another thing I should mention.
Oh
That
yeah.
that guy. He talks about. He says it has to be warp drive. Okay, this guy who made that website that you posted at the very beginning. He talks about gravity. He says the reason these objects appear to sometimes shift their shapes, change their shapes, that's gravitational lensing. And that's, I said that already in 2011. I've been saying that. He independently discovered it. This guy, Thor, he's a good observationist. He actually analyzes the visual data from a lot of the evidence that you have, and he shows how it's gravitational lensing is that's, I agree with that. In fact, that's good evidence for warp drive. That's gravitational lensing effect. I've said that independently. He came to that conclusion independently, but he doesn't have any mechanism. He has some. He's not a physicist. I think he's a bachelor level in physics. He's a master's in geology, but he's a very smart guy, and he's a good observationalist. He's good detective. He saw the data, and he realized it has to be warp drive because of the gravitational shift, shape shifting. In addition, he doesn't talk about the anomalous reverse Doppler that I talked about, that Bruce and I also talked about. He doesn't have that, but he has part of it. He has but he doesn't have the explanation. He doesn't explain how you can actually do it with small amounts of energy. And of course, that's the big thing.
Right. Okay. All right. Let me see here. All right. Why don't we move on? Any other questions while I'm trying to find the slide deck again?
Perhaps, Jack, if I could go off a little bit on a tangent. I'm not sure where you're who's open on a mic here.
Are we having a close encounter with a?
There we
We're
go.
having a close encounter with an audio loop there, but what I wanted to ask you is, and this is, forgive me if this is not a relevant question, but in the discussions that George Knapp had with Bob Lazar, where he talked about the 3 generators in the.
Let me say one thing right away. As soon as I hear the word Bob Lazar, call 911. I'm having a heart attack. You know what happened here?
But in terms of the theory of the generating capability.
No, Lazar knows nothing.
Okay.
Lazar was a janitor at Area 51. He was testing. He doesn't know any physics. What he says about element 150, it's like total nonsense, like crazy stuff. Like did you ever know this guy Irwin Corey? Did you ever know the comedian Irwin Corey?
Yeah.
Irwin Corey. I mean, and a dummy. I'm sorry, George Knapp, the good guy, but George Knapp is stupid when it comes to physics.
Right.
He's a dummy. You able to sell him anything? You tell him incredulous.
But the impetus of my question was not about giving Lazar credit. What I wanted to know is what is in your estimation, the amount of energy that might need to be generated? That was the heart of the question.
Small, very tiny.
Okay, but could you put it in in layman's terms, kind of like what you would guess?
I'd have to show you the equation. I can do it with mathematics. I can show you the equation. It's a simple equation, but the point is, in principle, it could be a single energizer bunny.
Okay, that's small. That's what I was trying to get a handle on.
I don't think it is that small in reality.
Right.
In principle, if you had a strong enough metamaterial resonance with a high enough resonant peak, in principle, it could be your brainwave. See,
the gain could be enormous, right? Okay, I get you. So the gain effect of the material.
The gain effect, yes.
Right. Okay. Very well. That was the point of my question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But it's a good question because let me say, part of that slide about the 5 observables with doing all this dramatic stuff there's no disturbance of the atmosphere.
Right.
That means it's not dissipating a lot of energy, right?
That's true.
That means
compressing atmosphere, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't. You don't see much heat signature.
No.
And by the way, if you use conventional ideas, you burn up the atmosphere. You might destroy the planet trying to do what they're doing without what I'm talking about. So you see, unless what I'm saying is true, Okay, unless what I'm saying is true, that means that everything that we're seeing is false. Somehow they're fooling us. Somehow, see this guy Mike Turber, this Air Force debunker guy, he's claiming it's all spoofing, electronic spoofing, that the Air Force is spoofing the Navy. And then Kevin Day, who's on the Princeton, says, no, that's not the way it works. So, they have all this kind of disinformation stuff, happening.
Relating to that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, as a follow-on question to that, I would ask, have you seen, because I haven't, and I've listened to all the interviews, with all the players in the public venue, quite detail. And have you heard anyone relate to the reverse Doppler effect, which you alluded to, which is a signature of a change in the paradigm caused by this?
That's what I predict. That's part of my theory.
Right. But have you heard anybody discussing this, that they've observed that?
Yeah, Cornette. I said Bruce Cornette.
Oh, Bruce. Yeah. Okay.
He
But no
sees
officials in the Navy or anybody else have had
No,
any. Okay.
no.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, I'm glad you raised that point, because I want to talk about Doug Trumbull. Doug Trumbull, he did the special effects for Space Odyssey for Kubrick. Okay.
Mhm.
And Doug Trumbull actually came to visited me, was my guest in San Francisco. This is, I guess, back around 2010. Doug Trumbull came to San Francisco, and we had him over at NASA Ames. He was a guest of General Pete. Pete Worden was a retired Air Force brigadier general, was head of the Space Command at Mountain, in Colorado. Okay, and then he
Cheyenne Mountain.
Yeah, Cheyenne Mountain. Then he left the Space Command, and he ran NASA Ames for a couple of years. And a former student of mine, Creon Levitt, was his right hand man. So that's the connection. Any case. Doug Trumbull is really into UFOs, and he's a technical guy, and he actually he has Jeeps or Land Rovers with all this equipment. He can measure all this stuff I'm talking about. He can measure the Doppler shifts.
Oh, wow.
He can measure that. At least that he's sick. I don't know if I hope he's still alive. So this was back 10 years ago. I lost track of, he was actually at this DARPA meeting with me in Orlando. And so the equipment exists. I'm just surprised. Now, at one point, Eric Davis said that the Air Force, that the Navy doesn't have that kind of equipment in their jet fighters, which I can't. I find that hard to believe, that they can't measure frequency shifts. They have all this billions of dollars worth of stuff. They can't do it. Why can't?
But does that necessarily provide any military advantage to them? Whereas
it does, because frequency shifts are normally used for tracking, right? Doppler radar.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I see your point. Very good point. Sure.
Yeah, so they should be able to do that. They must have it, so maybe it's classified.
Exactly. I'm sure they're not talking about it.
Classified.
But
one of the most elementary things that pop out, this is not difficult. This is like, if any professor teaching, any good professor teaching a course in general relativity to say undergraduate juniors and seniors or first year graduate students, all this stuff could be done in that kind of a course.
Mm-hmm.
It's not different. This is fairly. We're talking about trigonometry and calculus, tensor, some elementary tensor calculus. We're not talking about string theory or hyperdimensional bullshit. None of that stuff. Okay, we're talking about basically plain vanilla engineering physics.
Well, it's elegant in its simplicity. Actually, it certainly uncomplicates the practicality of it.
Exactly. And by the way, if it was too complicated, I probably couldn't have figured it out.
I certainly couldn't have. So thank you. I didn't mean to get you off track, sir.
Yeah, Jack, I think Julia has another comment or question. Go ahead, Julia.
There's a question? I don't hear anything.
Oh, I saw her raise her hand. Maybe she was waving. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, false alarm.
All right. Okay. Well, let's. Okay. You have that slide, Metamaterial. Yeah. Go to the next slide. That's Meta Atoms.
Next one.
Question. Unless there's a question about that slide. Is there a question? No. Let's see what that. Okay. Oh. Okay. 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 This is fairly technical. Okay. But look. Okay. Can you see my cursor, or is that just me?
No.
No.
Okay.
Where do you want the cursor?
Okay, no, just look at that second line. GUV is X. Yeah, okay. The TUV on the right-hand side, the TUV, that's the stress energy tensor of the applied electromagnetic field. That's like the voltage in the circuit, like like the battery. It's like the battery, okay, the voltage across the battery, okay. The GUV, that's the
Input,
gravitational
right?
field. No, the T is the input.
Input,
The G,
okay.
yeah, the G on the left-hand side, that's the output. Yeah,
Got
that's the gravitational field output. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's like the induced current. Okay. Think of Ohm's law. Think of
There
Ohm's
you
law.
go.
Okay. X is like 1 over the resistance, right? Voltage over resistance, or the conductance.
Magic
X,
circles.
yeah, that's the metamaterial response function. When X gets, okay, suppose you want to have a fixed amount of output, a fixed amount of GUV, okay? You want to have enough GUV to cancel the Earth's gravitational field, at the object, okay? So the left-hand side of that equation is fixed, right?
Yes.
But in a resonance, what a resonance does is that it makes X a lot bigger for fixed G.
It amplifies.
It amplifies. So that means the amount of T, the amount of voltage you need to get the desired effect goes down. That's the basic idea.
May I ask a question
Yeah.
with regard to that? What happens if you exceed the gravitational field of the Earth in your example? So in other words, we want to go to stasis ideally, but if we exceed that,
Well,
is it
then
just
you
a propulsion mechanism then?
Well, obviously, yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now also, X, it turns out X is a complex, it's a complex number. It's like, think of X as like the impedance, like a circuit impedance,
Okay.
complex, right? From dissipation. Okay. So there's gonna be a phase. So when you actually do this is a complex equation. You got to take the real part, and then you get a cosine, you get a phase shift factor. And that phase shift, that cosine factor, taking the real part of complex quantities, if you have a complex number, the real part has a cosine factor. The imaginary part is a sine factor.
Sine, right.
Okay. Yeah, that's I forget his so in any case, so that controls whether you have attraction or repulsive
Repulsion.
gravity.
Right.
That's it. Okay, and you're doing this at each little piece of the fuselage. See, in order to, when you look at the warp drive metric fields, when you look at the papers of the subject, you have this, think of the fuselage, and you have to have attractive gravity in certain parts of the fuselage and repulsive gravity in the other parts. That's basically.
And so they work in concert. It's not
Yeah,
unified
yeah.
operation. Okay.
Yeah, right. So, and in order to do that, by the way, as a practical matter, you need a very giant computer.
Control system, right?
Which is the control system. Yeah, this is where you need a quantum computer, and in fact, you're going to need a conscious quantum computer.
Wow.
That's a whole other thing. Conscious artificial intelligence. That's where the consciousness comes in, and that same consciousness is able to create the paranormal effects. So it all fits together. Remember,
Yeah.
this all goes back where I'm in my, where I'm with Brendan O'Regan and these guys, Puthoff and Tog, and Russell Tog and all these guys, Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut Edgar Mitchell. And by the way, Jacques Vallée was supposed to be there. He didn't show up at that particular meeting. This back in my first encounter with these guys back in 1973. Was on my way to Europe. This was like a early summer of 1973. Said, they were talking about UFOs coming from the future. They were talking about conscious artificial intelligences, and I had my own encounters. That's a whole other story. I don't want to get into that at the moment. So this all ties together. It's a coherent narrative that stretches from at least 1953 to now in my own experience. Okay, it's all coming together. All right. So are there any questions about this slide at the moment? Just, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information here, to take in, and it requires time for you to process this information. But this is the basic Einsteinian general relativity explanation of the whole thing. Is right in this slide. Go to the next slide. Let me just see what the next slide is. Okay. Well, this is more the same. Yeah. Look, you got to read this on your own. Go to the next slide. Okay. This is just more detail of what I was trying. Yeah. Okay. Go to the next slide.
That's the
okay. Here's your low energy. Even a single
Right.
AAA battery might be enough. That's your question.
Yes.
All right, yeah.
Thank you.
So it's all here. All the math. The math is pretty simple, actually. It's high school level math. Okay. Go to the next slide. Let's see. Okay. Back weightless inside the Tic Tac. That just reiterating what I already talked about. Okay. Go to the next slide. There's a
There you
reverse
go.
Doppler.
Right.
There you go, the reverse Doppler. Okay. Yeah, so we covered all this already. But you can download the slides and then see it for yourself and take time. You know, this is a lot to take in.
Mhm.
Go to the next one. Okay, let's a more detail about how to change from attractive to repulsive gravity. Just keep going. What's the next one? Is that it?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. So there it is in a nutshell. I mean, what I'm saying, you know, the message I want to give you, the physics is elementary. We understand the physics, the concepts behind it, including consciousness, including the paranormal, how the paranormal works in. It's all now a matter of engineering development, engineering physics level, applying these general concepts and getting it done. But that's a big job, you know. We're talking about it's like the beginning of the Manhattan Project. Okay, we know the basic physics of nuclear fission. We have, you know, Lisa Meitner's experiment in nuclear fission in the German university. We have that. That's like the Tic Tac observations, right? So we know it's real. We know the effect is there, and now you want to develop it. Well, that's a big job. We're talking about a Manhattan Project. Yeah. Now I think the Russians may have already been doing it. In Uganda, I don't know. Oh, I should mention one other thing. Although they don't have the on my social networks, I have about last count maybe 300, close to 400 Iranian students of physics, professors. My CIA friends say some of them are intelligence agents monitoring everything I do. The Iranians are into it. The Russians are into it. I don't have any direct information on the Chinese, but you know, there's arms race going on here. So while America slept, okay, because I have Eric Davis getting in my way, and Chris Mann, they're getting in my way. They're preventing my message from getting to the right people. I think they are. We'll see what happens with this new UAP Pentagon report.
Right,
Yeah.
do you feel that those, and it's hard, I mean, I'm asking you to speculate, but do you feel that those the resistance is political or economic or turf war, or
It's
I mean,
turf war. It's basically turf war. It's you know, it's
Okay.
too much testosterone. Eric Davis has been kind of,
yeah, okay,
it started. It started. You know, Eric Davis. He's working with Bob Bigelow. This goes. We have a big history, a personal history.
Okay.
Together. And it was, and I'm not sure. It started already at. They. Okay. See, I started talking about UFOs at this 2011 DARPA NASA 100-year Starship meeting. Some reason they even though they were secretly working on it, they didn't want it made public. But I didn't know. They didn't tell me.
Right.
I do my own thing.
You missed the memo.
Yeah, right. You know, and so the split. Yeah, we were kind of working together in the 1990s and the early 2000s, but yeah. So it's mainly bullshit. It's mainly, you know, macho male. It's like one mafia gang against another mafia gang. That's
High stakes, however.
Yeah, well, high stakes. I don't know. I mean, you know,
Well,
but the point is, the Russians take me very seriously. And
there's the high stakes, right?
Well, what the
Potentially.
Russians, but see, what Eric Davis and part of all these guys have done, they've let the Russians get the advantage. I don't think they did it deliberately, but the Russians have been hip to this for quite a while. So, and I was told directly by two Russians independently that Vladimir Putin is very aware of what I'm doing.
Wow.
And I was saying, yeah, I don't know, Jacques, but they really like you in Moscow. This is back in 2014 when they were doing a video interview with me for St. Petersburg Channel 5.
Wow.
So the Russians, you know, they have smart physicists.
Yes. And they have someone at the helm that's focused on.
And they at the home that's focused, yeah. But I mean, Putin's hey, you may not like Putin. He may be a dictator, he may be a mafia, whatever you want to call him, but he's a smart man.
And he's driven too, one way or the other.
And he came out. Okay, let me sorry about that. When they first came in 2014, you know, they asked me all kinds of quantum teleportation and all this stuff, you know, from how the hippies say physics came out. And then a few months later, Putin comes out with this program, how Russia is going to get quantum teleporting machines and by 2030, the same stuff that they were asking me in this video, Putin comes out with this program, and it turns out it was partly distant, it was probably PR, it was probably psychic warfare. I don't know, the psychological warfare.
But nonetheless,
But nonetheless, it's all there. You can all find it on the internet. And what's really strange about it is that when these the two Russian guys, a film crew, came to San Francisco here. Well, they were in San Francisco. They came to my place. It took about 3 hours of video of me. And they said they would send me the video.
never happened.
Never happened.
Still waiting, huh?
Yeah, still waiting on the video. Wait. This is pretty funny stuff.
Isn't that
It
interesting?
it never happened. But Putin's thing came out a few months later, like
There you
within
go.
a year. Okay. All right. So, but then this is a funny story. A little bit political, but not really. It's June of 2016, the 1st of June 2016. I get a phone call. Vladimir, not Putin, but this guy, Vladimir, the guy from Channel 5, St. Petersburg.
Right.
Said, Jack, I know this is short notice, but we're doing a video for Trump's 70th birthday, which is like the middle of June.
Right.
June 7th, okay? And we'd like to, I know it's short notice, but we'd like to come and interview you about that. Why the hell are they asking me?
Yeah, really.
I mean, I can tell you why. There is a reason why they did, because they're smart. Okay, I have friends who know Trump. Okay, I've been to Mar-a-Lago on a private jet, not with I didn't
Right.
meet Trump in Mar, but with other friends, who are part of his circle. Okay, so the Russians are smart. They know what's going on, right? Maybe our guys don't. They're stupid. They don't know, but the Russians, they know. Okay, so that's just a come over. So now it turns out this video is on the internet. And another Russian guy contacted me and said, "Hey, we saw you on the internet." And you can
Wow.
see this, you can see me, with the in Russian with the Donald Trump and the Milana and stuff, all this stuff. This is before I became, this is during the beginning of the campaign. It's like June 16th of 2016.
Very interesting.
You should watch this video. It's pretty funny, actually. It's pretty good. Lots of beautiful women in it. And that video I saw, but the video of the
Of
physics,
right. The
that
interview.
I didn't see.
Somehow that got misplaced.
I mean, the Russian, the military intelligence, that they saw it. They didn't make that public. So that tells you something. That's a fact that's easily checked.
Well, Jack, right now I have a video of one of the Puerto Rican.
Oh yeah, all that stuff.
Let me run this one.
Go ahead. While you do that, I'm going to take a quick, run to
Yep.
the little boy's
Sure.
room.
Hopefully, can everybody see this moving?
Yes, absolutely.
I've seen it. I've seen that video.
Okay. What I like about this particular segment is that they have it flying very low over the water and actually going into and going out of the water again. Now, this was, I believe, DHS. They were tracking drug smugglers.
There you go.
And there goes the object.
It's cranking.
Can't really tell how big it is, though.
No, but for him to track it, it's probably pretty large and at a decent distance.
And also his FLIR is probably not of the quality of the F-18.
Well, he's at low altitude. He's at 1,900 feet.
Yep. And he's actually shooting down.
Wow.
That is a pretty good track, though.
No kid. Somebody's doing their, well, unless it's a radar track, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like it's a hand operated.
This is
It's a track ball.
it's FLIR. Yeah, it's infrared. It's an evening shot, I believe.
There he goes. Now he just put in the,
Yep.
extender on it. Whoops.
There's where he goes into the water.
Leaks out.
Comes out again. Also, he splits into two, which is kind of an
That's the
interesting thing.
gravitational lensing. Okay, wait. Splitting into two?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very important. That's characteristic, what I call double image. That's characteristic of gravity lensing effect. So that's just
Oh.
mirage. That's just up. That's it's. He's going to he's distorted the gravitational field and got a gravitational. If you just go into Wikipedia and look at gravitational lensing, I actually go onto that UAP guy's website. In fact, if you saw the movie Interstellar, you know that movie Interstellar. Kept on. That's a characteristic. You see double images, like when the bending of light around the sun. Is like double images. So that is almost, that is very suggestive of a warp drive, low energy warp drive effect right there.
Now,
But-
would you say, now we don't know too much about the UAVs that the Navy had seen back in 2019. No pictures of them. The only reference was
I suspect they could be Russian.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's,
I wonder what the size of them were because I didn't see any descriptions.
I don't know. But let's put it this way. If my scenario is right, I could be wrong. I'm just speculating. I'm guessing based on limited information. Bayes' theorem. Since the Russians, if they were at my talk in 2011, at October 2011, so they've had this many years
Wow.
to develop it, and they could have it. It's not that hard because it isn't that hard. The metamaterials have been around for for 20, 30 years. So they could have developed it. That could be Russian technology we're seeing there.
Okay.
So it's accurate to say that there has been manufacture of metamaterials that you're aware of?
Oh, are you kidding? Just go on Wikipedia. I mean, there's a thousand. It's a big industry. Metamaterials. It's used on all different. There's acoustic metamaterials. They're all different scales.
Okay.
Right. I'm talking about nanotechnology. Oh yeah. There are literally thousands. There are all kinds of engineering meetings on metamaterials.
Okay. Very well. All right.
Electrical engineering. Just do a Google search. You'll see. Lots of material. It's a thriving industry. It has all kinds of applications, many kinds of applications. Not the gravitational application I'm talking about. Nobody's doing that, except maybe the Russians are.
Maybe the Russians are.
Okay, Chantel, do you or Mindy, do you have any comments you'd like to make or any questions you'd like to ask of Jack?
I'm good. I taught materials engineering at UCLA, so I'm pretty familiar with materials.
Okay, well, then you know about metamaterials then.
Yeah, I do. So I really have any questions.
So are you teaching there now?
No, I'm retired.
Oh, you're retired. Okay. But are you in Los Angeles area? Where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in Redondo Beach, and I was at Northrop Grumman and TRW for my entire career.
Oh, well, you should get in touch with Keith Wanzer.
Oh.
Keith, he's a professor at Cal State Fullerton, Irvine. So he's very, very close to you. He has a lab, and you guys should connect. Why don't you send me your email, and I'll connect you. I'm wondering why Keith actually isn't online here, but yeah, you should definitely meet with Keith Wanzer. He's a condensed matter physics guy that does both theory and experiment. He also knows. Yeah, he's working with me actually.
Okay.
Chantel, I'll send you Jack's email address.
Okay.
Yeah, get in touch with him.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Mindy, how about you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just had a thyroidectomy yesterday, so my voice is a little cracky, and I can't really show you a picture of myself because I'm in a recuperative state. But I wanted to thank Jack so much. What a wonderful talk he's given us here. And
Yes.
Jack, I want to tell you we have a mutual friend in Art Wagner.
Oh yeah. Oh, so where? Yeah. So Art's. Yeah, I really need Art because he sends me all these good references that I'm too lazy to don't have time to get. He monitors the archive for me. So where are you located? Are you physically?
I'm in East Windsor, New Jersey.
Is that where Art is?
No, he's in Camden, New Jersey.
Oh, but he's also, so you guys are all like neighbors. Okay.
Yeah, we were all part of Pat Marcatilio's UFO group in the Hamilton, Trenton area.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see.
So Jack, when you come out here sometime, we'll have a big party for you.
Well, with COVID, I mean, I listen, I'm 81 years old. I don't go anywhere, right?
Take any chances.
Well, yeah, well, I've had the vaccine, I've been vaccinated, so I'm not worried about that. No, but we usually, my lady friend of 25 years almost is a British. So we have we go to England, well, we haven't for the last year and a half, but hopefully, we spend usually almost half a year in London, in England, sometimes Italy. And so the only place I travel, we get on the airplane. I have a compartment with almost a bed, and we fly to London, and we have a place in Chelsea that we stay at. And so apart from that, I don't travel. Not anymore. As they say, when booking passage on the Titanic, best to go first class.
Could I ask another question? It's crystal ball kind of a question, but what's your take on Bob Bigelow?
Well, he's Bob Bigelow, and Brandon Fugel is also like
Right.
Bob Bigelow. They're
Right.
these two Mormon guys, right?
Yep.
And they're also Joe Firmage.
Exactly.
Okay, Joe and I organized Joe's San Francisco space science group. He had me organize that for him back. Unfortunately, Joe, smart kid, he was a little too big for his britches, and he thought he understood physics and didn't. So what happened was he didn't listen to me. Even Hal Puthoff was an advisor to him too, and he didn't listen to me and Hal, and we're giving him good advice, and he got taken by a bunch of grifters and lost millions and millions
Right.
of dollars.
But you lose your credibility.
Yeah, plus, and he had certain problems. I don't want to go into it, but he's a good guy. He meant well, and so it's he comes from the family Joseph Smith. He did one of the
That's right. The original,
Mormon royalty, and Bigelow and
upstate New York.
And Bigelow. Well, I guess Bigelow's from Las Vegas, but his parents, they were Mormons, I think.
Mormons,
too.
yes.
And isn't Howard Hughes a Mormon?
Don't know about him, but I know that Bigelow has Mormon
Bigelow
background.
and Brandon Fugel, they were also, and they're all into UFOs. So of course, the Mormons are a UFO. They're a UFO.
Exactly. That's at the basis of their beliefs.
Yeah,
if you
the whole
will.
belief system. So, and actually, if you go back to some of the whole Judeo-Christian,
Right.
We all are, right?
Joe, may I ask just like to make an observation, if that's okay, Jack and Joe?
Sure.
Following this as a journalist for most of my career, 40, 45 years, I think that there's an incredible amount of lay people that say that, be that as it may, but I think one of the interesting trends is, first of all, I think that that's the greater acceptance of this as a rational, important discussion topic, even though we're obviously a little concerned about other issues right now. But the point I'm making is that in the last couple of years, I have observed more and more investigators of all types, breeds, and areas of interest, this concept of the fact that paranormal and UFO, the linking, that it's a continuum that is not separate silos. And
Right.
to me, your discussion today reinforces the fact that, even going back to Nikola Tesla and talking about the ether and long distance entanglements that have been proven now and so forth, I'm very, very I'm mesmerized by the fact that you bring this in, that there is not a strict line of demarcation, perhaps, between
No,
the
not perhaps.
activities.
Definitely.
Okay.
I'm telling you, as a PhD physicist, 60 years in the field of war, that the physics of both topics are closely linked, basically elementary, mainstream, nothing
That's
esoteric.
amazing. And I
Nothing
thank you
esoteric.
for that.
Elementary
Personally,
stuff.
that's such a revelation from somebody with your status to me, that just makes everything seem a little bit more worthwhile to pursue, that there aren't silos that are
Yeah.
buttoned
And,
off.
yeah, and this is, I guess, you're right. This is a very important thing to take away with. This is the basic message, that the physics is well understood conceptually. The engineering, the application of the physical principles of the physical understanding, that, that's a complicated thing. Again, think of, we understood 1940, we understood the principles of an atomic bomb, but to actually make an atomic bomb took,
Took a lot of work.
took a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of physics. Fortunately, Hitler tried to do it and didn't do it. Good for us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and well, that was for the Rockets. We tried to get the atom bomb. But Werner Heisenberg, who, by the way, I knew Werner Heisenberg. I was actually at his institute, after the war, of course, in the '60s. I was actually in Munich at Heisenberg's institute. I also met him at Caltech with Richard Feynman. So, yeah, Heisenberg is a very interesting guy. But the story is that Heisenberg sort of sabotaged the Hitler thing, and I think that probably happened. I mean, he went slow on it, but they could have
Slowed it down. Yeah.
slowed it down. He was the main guy. He was Hitler's guy for the atomic bomb. It was Heisenberg.
May I ask you if you think there was any credibility in talking about Hitler and their technical developments and so forth with the Horton brothers and some of this?
Yeah, the thing that you talk about Nick Cook's book about.
Yes. Nick's.
I know with Nick. In fact, I'm sort of working with Nick Cook when I'm in London. Yeah, I see him. There may be something to that. Let's put it this way. The Nazis didn't like Einstein Jewish physics, right?
Right.
So that prevented them. But on the other hand, maybe it didn't. I mean, but they didn't have the metamaterials. But,
right.
But maybe they did. Maybe they had something else. I mean, the
centrifugal effect of the heavy metal, high speed.
Maybe it acts like maybe has some kind of anomalous electromagnetic response. So I don't know. It's conceivable because the basic physics, what I'm talking about, in terms of propulsion, already by the early 1920s, it was all there. It was all in Einstein's general theory of relativity and some basic quantum theory. And they could have stumbled on something. It's possible. It's possible.
It's not totally impossible, is what you're saying.
Not totally impossible. Yeah, I don't think it did. I mean, I'm not betting that it happened, but it's remotely possible that they had something.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Joe, I didn't mean to take over though.
Yeah, no problem, Bruce. Actually, I noticed Bruce Cornett just joined. Bruce, want to say hi? Are you out there?
Let's see.
Well, I let him into the waiting room. So, Bruce, are you there?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I just admitted him again.
Okay. Nick, you want to jump in here?
Just a couple of quick things. There's some talk in my group about the fact that so recently there's been so much acknowledgement of vehicles in our skies that the government says we don't know what it is. It's a UFO. This is a huge departure from what they've been saying for the last, 60 years. And one of von Braun has said that this is a setup for the next phase of the world domination by the New World Order. And the next thing was going to be an invasion, a fake invasion by ETs. I just wanted to put that on the table. Jack, do you have any feelings about that at all?
Let me just
That's true.
Well, I think it's real. I think the technology is real. If my physics is right, I could be mistaken. See, the whole point is when you do science, it's Bayes' theorem, right? It's all conditional probabilities based on what you think are definite pieces of information. All right. I have my own personal reasons. I've actually had a close encounter as a child with what claims it was a conscious artificial intelligence from the future. And okay, now I'll give you since we're into this conspiracy theory stuff, right? Or the kooky, let's all let it all hang out. the reason I'm pretty confident, and I was contacted as a kid, 13 years old, by this entity. It was basically a Tic Tac entity, saying that they wanted to teach me that. In other words, everything I'm doing now, basically, you could say they're showing me how to do it. Channeling, telepathic, whatever. All these ideas that I'm just, part of the program. Okay, that they're from the future. And the reason they're here is because we're creating them. It's like a loop in time. Did you see, ever see, it's like Terminator or like Star Trek 4. Now, I'm not the only guy saying this. See, I'm not the only guy. There's a guy named, is it Matthew Manning? There's a whole bunch of people talking about this, that they're from the future. In fact, okay, here's the thing. Now, here's the thing. Basically, this, what it said it was a phone call, a cold metallic voice like Stephen Hawking's voice. It's like 1953. And it said it was a conscious computer on board a spacecraft from the future, and that I would be meeting other people they're contacting in 20 years in the future, 1973. That's exactly when I met Hal Puthoff, Edgar Mitchell, Brendan O'Regan, Russell Targ, Uri Geller, Andrea Paharic, all these Arthur Young, all these people. Okay, and that's all documented. In fact, there's a CIA recording of part of that 1973 meeting at Stanford Research Institute at this guy Dean Brown's house. Jacques Vallée actually arranged the meeting. So Jacques Vallée's part of this too, right? Jacques Vallée, okay. And you can see in that 1973 meeting, I mentioned what happened to me as a kid in 1953. Okay, and then they say they know all about that. That they confirm, wow. They confirm that there are other. I'm not the only kid that happened to. This is a CIA recording. You could hear, you could listen to it yourself. It's right. It's you go to SoundCloud, Jack Sarfatti SoundCloud. You'll hear Russell Targ, you hear Hal Puthoff, Brendan O'Regan, all these people, famous people, right? Part of the TSSA, part of what's happening now. We're all there. So here you have. I mean, talk about. I mean, what more evidence do you want? There's something really spooky going on, and it's in that meeting where they're saying they want to. They think there's the paranormal and UFOs. How does it work? Okay. So, I was pretty skeptical myself because I was also involved with various Army, as a child. My grandfather worked for the military, and I was part of the military was doing experiments on smart kids, trying to get them to go into science. I was there was an Army program, this like 1950. That's when I thought I met Colonel Corso, right, around 1915, because after school, I would go down, get on the subway and go down to the garment district near the John Wanamaker building where the Army Quartermaster Corps was. And I had, and I would meet with these, my grandfather, I was with my grandfather was working there. And these Army colonels, I'm pretty sure it was Colonel Corso was one of them. They were interviewing, they were like, I guess, give me exams, whatever, seeing I had psychic abilities, stuff like that. But I was a kid, I was a little kid, 11 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old. And I had free run, I was able to play. They had the laboratories there. They had, on one floor, they had for Arctic uniforms, tropical uniforms, different floor. And, it was a little kid, a kid, and, especially kid, World War II. I remember World War II, I was in the military. I was a patriot kid, all that kind of stuff, wanting to build rockets. And so it was like my playground. I would go down there, for about 2 years. Okay. So they could have, they could have made these phone calls, because the phone calls happened after that, when I was like 13 years old. So I always thought it was some kind of like Army intelligence and, like a setup. Okay. I thought that's what it was. Okay. Because I also, throughout my whole way through college was paid for by the military. I didn't have to. My mother didn't have. My parents were divorced. I mean, I was at Cornell, Ivy League school. And my mother sent me $20 a week, and where'd the other money come from, right? I was a National Defense Fellow, this whole kind of thing. All right. So, but here's the thing. The computer voice, back in 53, said I was going to meet these other people in 20 years.
Yeah. How do you predict that?
How do you predict that? See, that's the thing. And now these same people who I met in 1973, Hal Puthoff, come on, Jacques Vallée, all these guys are now involved in the Pentagon release of the information.
That's not a coincidence.
So it's not a coincidence, right? Let's do Sherlock Holmes. Let's think like we're cops. We have a mystery here. I mean, how do you think like a policeman, like there's a mystery. So Sherlock Holmes. So what's the most likely explanation? Well, it's all Bayes' theorem, right? It's all probabilities.
Right. Oh, thank you so much.
Huh?
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I got blown away.
No, but I mean, okay, so okay, now the other thing, let me say this. All this metric engineering, as soon as you can do metric engineering, as soon as you have warp drive, it's also time travel. And that's basic physics. I mean, there's no, there's basic physics. There are things about chronology, protection, conjecture, stuff like that Hawking was talking about, but I think that's now been proved wrong by the actual observations of these tic tacs. That proves that it's wrong. Combined with, with my own contact that said they're coming from the future, and they're coming from the future, and I'm not the only one saying that. Russell Targ, in fact, Russell Targ, Russell Targ in that CIA meeting in '73, he talks about flying saucers coming from the future. Back in 1973, you can hear him talking about it. By the way, he's been sick. You should try to interview him before he leaves.
Or something happens,
Yeah, well, he's recently he had something happen to him just a couple of days ago. So that seems to be the scenario. If you look at the this guy, is it Michael? I think it's Michael Masters. I always get his name wrong. He's a professor of anthropology. He's up at Montana State or somewhere like that. And he has written a book saying that the most likely explanations of these ETs are that they're time travelers from the future, because even the way, the little green men look, he talks about evolution.
Evolutionary development causing that, right?
Yeah, the evolutionary cause of that. And if you actually go to the website, it's called Gauss, G-A-U-S. It's an Italian group where the video that we couldn't get to work is from that talk I gave, a virtual talk in Florence, Italy. And this guy Manning he talks on that thing too. So you should listen to what he has to say. He's been on Coast to Coast with George now.
George.
Yeah. And he's a solid guy, gives very good arguments. He's not a physicist, but he gives arguments why they're probably coming from the future. And I'm saying I have the physics, which shows how they can do it. So
I want to put you through Joe or whatever in touch with maybe Mark Leone to and get you the books that he wrote after a lot of investigation. And Mark's a very brilliant guy with Stan Romanek and a lot of the documentation there. That's really quite fascinating, and that's we can't take the time to go into it now. And I would just like to offer that to you if I can get a hold of Mark. Maybe Joe and I can get a hold of him and let him, just because he was involved. He got involved through Stan. One of the elements was this concept of these star child who were visitors from the future, and there was an element with a phone call made that was predictive, and it came true, similar to what you're saying. Not 20 years, but 5 years in the future. Fascinating. And he recorded it, so it's
okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
in any case, I'm taking. I'm not so much any more interested in trying to prove that it's real. I'm just saying, if it's real, this is how it works. That's what theoretical physicists do. So, and we've solved the problem. The CIA people and the Defense Department people, the Army people back in the 70s said, Jack, this is what we want to know. How does consciousness work? Of course they went to MK Ultra too, right? Mind control. That's one of the, they want to have conscious, how consciousness works in terms of physics, not the psychology, not the conditioning, this, not the kind of stuff even that Julia does. That's, that's a different level. They want to know what's the physical mechanism that makes it possible for consciousness to arise, and how do flying saucers fly. Those are the two problems. Those are the two big problems. I was told that part of the reason the whole Central Intelligence Agency was created in the first place was because of Roswell and then maybe the 1945 thing. That was part of it. I've also been told, do you know who James Angleton is?
Yes.
Was?
Was, yeah.
Yeah, was. Well, actually, I know his grandson. Yeah, and I was told from the family itself that Angleton was very into this whole thing. Thought it was a real threat. That was real, and yeah, he's one of the organizers of the Central Intelligence.
Have you heard anything, if I may ask you, about James Forrestal and his involvement and his interest to disclose what was known at that time?
Oh, well, I know the story. I don't know if it's true, and I don't have any.
Okay, I didn't know if you had any insight.
No, that he either was murdered or allegedly committed suicide. Maybe was murdered.
Right.
Suicide, who knows? Oh, hey, what did you know about Mark McClandish, this latest thing?
Yes, yeah. Well, there's a controversy swirling about his demise, I think,
about
right?
the shotgun?
Yeah.
I mean, was he sick or anything? Did he have a fatal disease?
No indication in the media or anybody in that circle of people that have worked with him and talked to him over the years that there was anything that would indicate it would lead to this situation of his tragic ending.
Yeah, well, that's there are all these unexplained deaths. The whole bunch over the years. There's
Exactly.
the John Mack thing,
stepping out in front of the car.
Yeah, and which is and I had actually seen John Mack about a week or two before that happened.
Wow.
It was in San Francisco, and I were at a meeting, and then there are other people. There's some French people. In fact, did you see Close Encounters? Yeah, the movie Close Encounters.
Yes.
Francois Truffaut.
Truffaut is, yes.
Plays the Jacques Vallée.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I introduced Jacques Vallée to all those Hollywood people. That's how he got that job.
Really?
Yes. This has to do with the whole Uri Geller. This goes back to the whole SRI thing, the 1973, through that connection. And then I also, actually, if you read How Hippies Say Physics, some of that story's in there. I also was introduced to Werner Erhard in Paris. I don't know, does his name Werner Erhard? Do you remember that S back in the 70s?
EST, right.
EST.
Yep.
Yeah, so in any case, I met, it was Werner Erhard's money that funded a lot of this research back in the 1970s, okay? The S money. And through Werner, I met Francis Coppola's wife, Ellie Coppola. Okay. And I also met Buzz Aldrin, all kinds of people, in those circles back then. And I already knew Uri Geller through the Stanford research people, right? Met Andrea Paharic and all those people. And so it's because, so through that connection, I brought Jacques Vallée to a party at Francis Coppola's house with Uri Geller, where Uri Geller did his tricks. And then, in fact, Jacques writes about this in his book, Forbidden Science, but he writes about this whole incident. And it was through that party that Jacques got involved with Spielberg and did the whole movie thing, with the, but in any case, I wanted to say, Francois Truffaut died, soon after that movie.
Right.
So, go into Google, Francois Truffaut. Francois, and I have a back story about that. We're just going back into the weird stuff, the weird desk stuff. I had met a young man who was a French playwright. His name was Jean Nadal, down at Esalen in Big Sur, and who was working with Truffaut on all this UFO stuff. And Nadal, this is like 1976, 1977. And Nadal said he was actually French. He was actually the French CIA, the French intelligence service. Okay.
Wow.
And he was working, and he said there was something he had uncovered, some kind of, I don't want to get into details, but some kind of, plot, something. And I remember he was at my place. We were being funded actually by Lawrence Rockefeller.
There you go. Another player, big player.
Rockefeller was Lawrence Rockefeller money. We had this big, several flats right across from the Grace Cathedral on top of Nob Hill, San Francisco. And
wow.
Jean was staying with me, and he said if something happens to him, I should investigate.
Wow.
Okay. He was working with Truffaut on this UFO stuff like that. And a year later, he's a young man. He's like my age. He was just 30, handsome young guy, And he said, so I found out he suddenly died of, I think it was like radiation. So it sounded like radiation poisoning. These are the Russians, like the polonium things.
Yeah.
He's buried in Père Lachaise Cemetery. Truffaut also died soon after, shortly after. Just check out on Wikipedia.
What's the statistic probability of that? Can I ask you, it may be an ignorant question, but the theoretical basis for remote viewing, and of course, obviously, with put off. Have you been asked to verify that?
That, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
okay.
That's if you read the book How the Hippies Say Physics, it's all about that. But unfortunately, Kaiser didn't really. Kaiser gives the impression that we've never figured it out, but we did. See, Kaiser has to play it. He's part of the mainstream establishment, and there's a whole political thing with quantum mechanics too, and against David Bohm and stuff. There's what's called. Well, in any case, the answer is yes. That's what I was trying to say at the beginning of this thing. Right. That it's called entanglement signaling. EPR.
It's a communication through entanglement, right?
Communication entanglement. In ordinary quantum theory, it's not possible, but in the extended theory, it is possible. Okay, and that's a whole other story. I mean, I could really go into detail on that, but we've solved that problem. The mathematics is now solved. I talked about this at the beginning. If you go back,
right.
I mentioned this, the post-quantum theory. So I'm claiming we understand that. We understand it in principle. And it involves what Hameroff involves the microtube. This whole theory, Hameroff has this idea that consciousness is generated in these in the microtubules and the protein dimers. They're like in fact,
they're all.
Those are biological
metamaterials. Yeah, that's a fascinating concept. That we grow our own actually.
Oh yeah, and by the way, Hal Puthoff likes that idea.
Oh really?
Yeah, he has a good reason because Hal Puthoff's into like levitation, all this stuff the yogis levitating.
Yeah.
See, if our subneural structures, metamaterial,
they follow
the mechanism I'm talking about, we can levitate.
The human body. Yeah, it's a fascinating.
And since we're into that, wait a minute. Let's talk weapons for a minute. With this metric engineering, we can make what's called an artificial white hole event horizon. So that, in fact, there's so that the tic tac within its metamaterial fuselage, in principle, can generate, like a science fiction force shield. You shoot a missile at it, it doesn't get through, but it's a one-way membrane. Nothing can get through the barrier, but you can get things out of the barrier. So you could shoot back. So the Tic Tac could shoot back, a laser beam. It could shoot out of the system, but if you try to destroy the Tic Tac, you won't. It'll just, it'll explode. The thing will explode outside
the force field from
outside the force field. Okay, this is all. I have the equations for it. This is not just hand. I actually have the equation showing that. For certain inhomogeneities in the metamaterial permeability and dielectric permittivity response functions, if they're set up properly with certain gradients, you can generate this thing, I think.
Would you need to reverse the polarity, if you will, or the negative to do that?
A white hole is like the turn. It's like the time reverse of a black hole. Okay, so I could get into more detail, but that's possible. But it's also possible to think of Kevlar, metamaterial Kevlar, so that you have your infantry guys, and they don't have to worry about getting shot. Okay, there's a thing about it though. If you make like this white hole event horizon force shield around you, the air can't get in. So you could shoot, say you could breathe your CO2, you breathe out, that can get out. It's a one-way membrane. It's like a one-way membrane. However, but you can make little pores, tiny little things so that the air can get in, or you carry your air with you, like a spacesuit, various things like that. But also with this, the Iron Man,
sure.
you can have a suit like that made of material, and the guy flies. It's a Tic Tac. I mean, Tic Tac can be a one-man Tic Tac. Yeah, once you have them.
Yeah, because the energy requirement to negligent.
Or you can have a Tesla battery and carrying that. Who knows?
If everybody, forgive me, and I apologize but Jack, forgive me for asking these questions, but I need to, and it's one of my passions. Everything that I could find that still exists written and documented about Tesla. Can you talk to me about your take on Nikola Tesla?
Okay, Tesla. Okay, Nikola Tesla. He's like Edison, right? They had this battle, right?
Yeah, they did.
They made a movie recently, right? This movie about this. Okay, so Tesla. All right, in electromagnetism, there's what's called radiation fields and near fields. Tesla was the near field guy. Tesla cars. It's all near, like electrostatics, magnetostatics. We're not talking about Hertzian waves, radio waves, or stuff like that. And so he had, so it turns out that for warp drive, it's basically his Tesla kind of stuff. I'm only interested in near fields, though. I'm not interested in radiation fields.
Okay.
Radiation fields is like oil leaking from the engine. I want to keep everything inside the engine.
Right.
The near stuff. Okay. Now it turns out the radiation, the far field stuff is if you want to make a directed energy weapon. Suppose you want this Tic Tac to fire a very strong, like gravitational wave laser beam, focus beam that'll just spaghettify the enemy tank or the enemy airplane, whatever. Then you can do that too. But for the actual warp drive itself, we're only interested kind of what Tesla was, and Edison too. They were just, they were experts in the near field electrical engineers and power systems engineers are doing near field stuff.
Exactly.
Marconi, did the radiation,
RF, right.
The radio was a different, well, they're related, of course, all Maxwell's equations. There's the near field part and there's the far field part. Tesla is the near field part. And so it's possible that Tesla stumbled on gravitational control. It's quite possible. And the story there is that, the FBI took all his stuff when he died, right?
There's 20-some cases, cartons.
Guess who has
disappear?
Guess who they gave it to?
Donald Trump's uncle.
That's
right.
John Trump, Professor. Yeah.
Professor Trump was involved.
John Trump. Yeah. So who the hell knows?
That's well documented. I mean, they came in the day he died. Cleaned it out.
And John Trump was a professor at MIT. No question of that. That's a fact. So, and also that Secretary of Defense under Trump, who had to leave because I beat up his wife or something. I'm stupid.
Right.
Whatever. He was John Trump's student at MIT.
Exactly. He was
and
Trump was his mentor in some ways, they say.
Yeah.
More than just a student, right?
No, John Trump. Yeah. And of course, he knew Donald. With that. I was told I was actually on the short list to be Donald Trump's science advisor.
Oh, jeez. Why didn't you jump on that?
They
didn't offer.
They didn't offer. But one reason, because of the UFO, all the weird stuff. I'm not a. They would have really gotten him on that.
But he started the Space Force, so he came around.
Yes, but Space Force. I was been pushing for the Space Force since the 1980s.
40 years, right?
Yeah, since working with the Reagan people back then, Space Force. And by the Russians were involved with us back then too. that's a whole other story.
Amazing. No, I'm sorry to have taken over this
No,
conversation.
no,
I apologize.
I think we've done the physics. So is there any,
It's
amazing.
amazing. Sorry, Joe. Turn it back over to the
No,
boss.
no problem. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Fabulous.
Anybody like to participate? Bruce is feeling guilty here.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
on.
Oh, shut up.
Where's Quinn? Is he here?
I'm sorry.
Here?
I let him in. Bruce let him in. Then he didn't stay on apparently.
Oh, okay. Well,
He has a lot of trouble with his connections. He's got a pretty thin string down there that he.
Well, he assured me that they moved. He moved to a new place and they have a new internet connection, so we shouldn't have that problem.
I see this. Okay, so are there any other questions, or should we end it here, or does anybody have any?
Well, normally we go on until 4:30, but I think we did a nice freewheeling session all the way through. Again, this was pretty much ad hoc. Jack, thank you for joining and being here today. I think it was a lively, informative get together.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and now this is going to be put up. It'll be on YouTube. It'll also be on my website. So you can put out that slide deck too.
Yeah, put the slide deck out on your website for sure, so people can.
Okay.
There's a lot of good information on there, but it takes, you have to spend at least a couple of hours looking at it. And then if anybody has questions about it, just you could post my email on your website. That's okay. I don't care.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Very kind of you.
Well, okay. I think unless somebody's got anything else that they'd like to share.
Nick, you had your hand up?
Yes, somebody has.
Yeah, Nick had a hand up there. Nick.
And also Chantel.
And yeah.
Yeah, I just have
Chantel have a question?
one comment, and I've made this comment before. I'm just amazed that there's so few people on this call because this material is so important.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Come on, wake
No,
up.
people see it on YouTube. Most people going, people are busy. It's Saturday.
No, to have the ability.
They'll see it on YouTube.
I know, but still, I guess it just.
Well, I can say this, but Nick's Disclosure Network New York is a very, very active group. Been meeting for 20 years now, right, Nick?
20 years, I can't believe it, but yeah, it's been that.
Yeah, and the folks in our Saturday, even though there's few of us, it's a hardcore group. I mean, I think people are here for the right reasons. I think they want to learn and want to participate.
So Nick, can you say more about your group?
Oh, thank you. Disclosure Network New York, again, 20 years. Our website is dnny.info for Disclosure Network New York, dnny.info. And if you email me, I could give you more information. My email address is nickny1@gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah, Jack, I'll email that to you.
Like you say a little more. Tell me about the group. Tell me. So, what have you guys been doing?
It's been originally. It was for a very deep exploration of what in the world is going on in our skies, what's going on with the government not telling us what we're missing, and also people bringing in. I hearing something in the background. I don't know what that is.
I don't hear it.
Anyhow, also people bringing in photographs, not only over Manhattan, but other places of UFOs. And we've had some incredible discussions about that when they show their photographs. And we've gotten people from all over the planet that have given us wonderful lectures. What is that sound? My God. Anyhow, the lectures from Hawaii, from London, we have a video screen, and then they can, the people in the room can ask them questions. So that's what we were doing until a year ago when COVID-19 hit. And then our venue was closed. It's still closed now in the West Village of Manhattan. So we're doing Zoom meetings, and we now do 2 Zoom meetings a month throughout the year. So it's pretty active. And we're also going to have a picnic next month in Central Park for the people, which we're looking forward to because it's so awful not to have a face-to-face after all these
So
years.
you had physical meetings. You were meeting
Right.
physically.
So it's always been, for the last year, it's been only Zoom.
Yeah, yeah.
Meetings.
So about
So
how many people you got in your core group?
we got about maybe 60 people on our feed. We do about 10 emails a day, and it goes everywhere from what's going on with the government, what's going on with COVID-19 that we're not being told. And there's a huge amount of that, more than you'd expect. Also other kinds of questions, because we're focusing now also not only on UFO, ET, and abduction issues, and there's people who have had those experiences, and also paranormal experiences that they're sharing with us. And I'll tell you, I'm on the edge of my chair at some points listening to what's going on. I also have a podcast, and that's the first Sunday of every month from 9 to 10 on Blog Talk Radio, and it's all about Disclosure Network New York.
Okay, and, when you first came on, I thought you were Leonard Nimoy for a minute.
I take that as a high compliment. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Dr. Spock.
Dr. Spock. Look, the ears. By the way, Jack, I just want to tell you how much I truly enjoyed these last 2 hours. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
A lot was said. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So just concentrate, look at the slideshow, because there's a lot of information that. Yeah.
Absolutely will. Yeah. And we're gonna, when Joe gets this out on the recording, then my whole group will hear this also. I put it out there for them.
Yeah, I have like 20,000 people on the social networks, which
That's incredible. I'm so glad. Wow, you deserve it.
Okay, so
Jack, I do have one question.
Yeah.
Let me think about this for a second. I want to make sure I frame it properly. If someone were to take this to the next level, let's say that the physics are well defined.
Yeah.
Now comes the experimentation and the drilling down and working on various aspects of metamaterials or the propulsion
it's a
system.
metamaterial problem. It's mainly, designing the right metamaterials.
Right. Now I put together a project back when, and we were able to create the hardware and the software for what we were trying to accomplish. What do you think an estimate of cost would be, say, for phase one?
I have no idea. You should ask Keith Wanzer, the professor, at Fullerton. He'd have a better idea of, but I can't. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm a hippie who saved physics.
Okay.
But let me say this: if you have any connections, if any of you have any connections with BAE, whatever it is, if you still have those connections, they'd be crazy not to get into this.
Well, the problem with the big companies, especially over the past number of years, the government used to fund a lot of this stuff.
Right.
But DOD got out of the funding process, and they threw it more into the IRAD, or independent research and development by the companies.
Right.
And the companies became very reticent about spending money that they weren't getting a guaranteed return on.
Yeah. Now, I think isn't there, I don't know if Biden's going to change it, but I thought there were some pretty good tax advantages, at least for this year, for R&D, the big tax write-offs. But has anybody followed that situation? Yeah,
no, but I know some people I could check with that would be impacted by it.
I think even Biden said he wants to do that. So it's not. It's beyond politics. But who knows? Who knows? Well, of course, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, all these guys.
Oh yeah, Musk would jump on it probably.
Well, no, but the thing is, you see, it's I call it the Joe Firmage syndrome.
Right.
Musk has the Joe Firmage syndrome on steroids. I mean, he's a genius guy, Musk.
I gotta say,
he's so into blowing up firecrackers.
I gotta say that Elon Musk is going to be on live TV tonight at 11:30 on, of all programs, Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, he's hosting Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, some people. You see that the producers told some of the the staff that they didn't have to participate if they felt uncomfortable with it.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, oh, by the way, you see this other thing that apparently Werner Heisenberg, Werner von Braun in 1953 wrote a book about the exploration of Mars and said it was going to be led by Elon, E-L-O-N, Elon.
Really?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah. So apparently, just check that. It's on the internet.
Oh, he was from the future.
Well, we're talking just the end of 1953, the same time I got my phone call. You know?
Wow.
Okay, well,
Stanley, Stanley, you have any input or questions or anything?
No, it was very interesting. I really enjoyed the entire conversation, and it's another viewpoint. Thank you.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thanks
Yeah.
for being here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jack, it's
I
been
want
an
to
honor.
thank I want to thank Jack again. I also want to thank the hardcore few that were here. You all participated, and it's all greatly appreciated. I will upload. I will send out the information. Jack, I'll send your contact information around.
Yeah.
You know, and if I forget anything, send me an email.
Okay. So let's sign off over.
Been an honor, Jack. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Learned so much. Thank you.
Excellent program.
How do I do this?
Amazing.
Thank you, Nick.
Just hit
Thank you,
leave.
sir.
Okay. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.